Hey, what's going on, YouTube? Kenny here, and today we have a very, very special presentation. So on the line with us is Nathan Evans. So Nathan Evans, for those who don't know, is part of the Innovation Lab. Say hi, Nathan.
Oh, hi, guys.
All right, and if you didn't know what the Innovation Lab is basically a forum from which the subscribers and the very loyal followers of the Redcliffe Research brand, if you will, get together and we try to come up with strategies. We come up with reports, and we come up with really extremely good due diligence under a bunch of different working groups, if you will, right? And so the one thing that Nathan was able to lead is what we're calling the Space ETF. We've actually put together a very distinguished and competent kind of offerings of what we think are the best in space. And you ask, Kenny, why are you more capable than Cathie would and her team at putting together a space ETF? Well, we actually have an aerospace engineer on the team. We also have a rocket scientist, PhD type, on the team as a technical advisor. You have the best sentiment and technical strategist in Tommy working with us. And obviously, I'm biased, but I also helped out a little bit. And then we also have Nathan, one of the best researchers I've dealt with in my many years of doing research analytics. That is not that's not me being modest or anything like that. He is absolutely one of the best I've ever worked with. And the interesting thing about him is he's actually only 18. His CV, or if you will, kind of his resume that he put to the Innovation Lab actually had him at, I think, a 1650 SAT score, which automatically triggered an interest for me to see if this guy was lying about that or not. But he's the real deal, and he loves space, and so he was the perfect lead for this project. So a lot of talent behind him to help him out, but he definitely carried the brunt of this. And without further ado, I'm going to kind of hand it to him and have him start us off.
Yeah, Kenny, thanks for having me on the channel. So yeah, I'm Nathan. I'm really interested in becoming an aerospace engineer. When I grow up, I got a 1550 on the SAT. I think 1650 is over the limit there, but of course it doesn't matter. So my team in the Innovation Lab has been able to put together a pretty detailed report on exactly how we plan to front run Cathie Wood's upcoming space ETF, which will go live on March 29th, according to the filings, under the ticker symbol ARCX. And not only in this report do we talk about how we're going to front run ARCX, but we also like to give a general idea of what is actually going on in the space industry right now and why it is an attractive investment. So that's how I want to start this presentation off, with giving you an overview of what really is exciting about space right now. And yep, that's my slide. So the thing about space right now is that space is very expensive, and it's expensive because every time, oh, hang on, I have to share my screen.
Oh man, Nathan, you're gonna disappoint the viewers if I have to cut this.
Okay, yeah, this is all you missed. You just missed blanked a white screen with why space is exciting right now. But space is exciting right now because every time you want to launch something into space, you have to use an entirely different rocket. You have to throw the whole thing away. It's an extremely expensive process. The space shuttle tried to fix this problem, but didn't really do a very good job. But we're finally reached a technological point where we are able to reuse rockets. And that is driving down the costs of space travel significantly. How significantly? Well, here's a graph. So this is the Delta IV Heavy. This is a rocket that made its maiden voyage in 2004. And if you want to launch something on a Delta IV Heavy, it'll cost you about $12,000 per kilogram that you want to send to orbit. Contrast that with the Falcon Heavy, which made its first flight in 2018. You can launch a payload on the Falcon Heavy for only $1,700 per kilogram. So that's already a 7x reduction in all costs of sending payloads to orbit. Then you have this is the Spacex Starship. It is currently the leading concept for what we will be able to do once we have a fully reusable launch system. And once that is complete, I'm guessing we'll be able to get down to this cost in 2032-ish, but we will be able to get things into space for as little as $30 per kilogram. Now, I do have to do a little bit of explaining here. Starship could fly as early as next year. However, in order to get the cost of launching things into space all the way down to $30 per kilogram, you'd have to be able to reuse this not tens of times, but hundreds of times. And we'd also have to mass produce enough of these things to saturate all of the demand in the space industry. So costs won't get down to this level by next year, as Elon Musk will probably want you to believe, but we will get there within roughly a decade's time. And that has a lot of really big implications for industries that were previously not possible in space or not economically feasible that will become possible. So for reference, this is the ISS. This is the biggest project we've ever tried to accomplish in space, and it's had the financial backing of 15 of the wealthiest countries in human history. And this is the biggest thing we've been able to do in space. I mean, this is really impressive, but I mean, it's not very big, and that's because it's so expensive to get payloads into space. But contrast that with what we will be able to do with reusable rockets, and things get crazy really quickly. So obviously there's Starlink. SpaceX has already launched thousands of these satellites, and once the constellation is complete, it'll be able to provide high-speed internet to everyone across the globe, no matter where your location is. Other things that we'll be able to do in space is private space stations, space tourism, also private research. This will become significantly more economically feasible, and we'll see a lot more companies try to make their very own space stations. Then, of course, there is building a base on the moon. This is where it starts to get, like, you might think this is out there, but we have all the technology to build everything you see on the screen right now. The thing is, it's just so expensive to get all this stuff off of Earth. But with reusable rockets, that cost will come down, and we will be able to build large structures like this off Earth. Then, this is one of my favorites. This is something that's also will be economically feasible. This is building solar arrays in space and then beaming the energy back to Earth via microwave. And while, of course, putting this much stuff into space right now is currently way too expensive to be feasible, with reusable rockets, you could probably, for, I think, less than $1 billion, someone did the calculations, and for less than $1 billion, you could put enough equipment into space to power New York City with unlimited clean energy indefinitely. And for reference, New York pays, I think, $800 million per year on electricity. So imagine the profits for the company that does that first. Other things that we'll be able to do, asteroid mining. So this is 16 Psyche. It's the core of a failed planet. It's currently in the asteroid belt, and its worth, if we mined it today, would be, I think, tens of thousands of times all of the money in existence. So the potential here is really insane to pretty much crash the precious metal market. Again, massive profits for whoever does this first. And all of these things that I'm listing, even when it comes to building a city on Mars, this seems really far out, but at the rate that costs are declining to send things to space, all of the things I just listed will become economically feasible within the next decade, if not 2 decades tops. So, of course, Kenny probably has some input here, but all of these things will, be a reality in our lifetimes at the rate things are progressing, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and the way to think about this too, ladies and gentlemen, it's the thing is, the stock market is absolutely forward-looking, right? So if you're saying, okay, this is 10 years from now, then you definitely want to get a good price in now. Regardless of what you think about kind of different sectors, I think this is one of the first sectors where you can see a demonstrable kind of move to the downside and on cost per kilogram for something to happen, right? So, if you follow ARC and their innovation lab, or not their innovation lab, sorry, that's my innovation lab. If you follow ARC, right, one of the things they talk about is, that cost cutting curve. Once you see that kind of huge decrease in cost, then these things become way more attainable. And that's kind of what Nathan is suggesting. The other thing that I'd suggest too, if you want to talk about like very near term things that are super sensible and things that we are working on. Being in touch with a lot of cool guys, Special Operations Command is definitely one of the users of some of these companies that we are talking about. But for the second part is, if you didn't know, during the Trump administration, there's a thing called the Space Force, which is an entire branch of the military. So this is like saying, okay, we're going to have an Air Force now, and then you buying stock in Boeing on that day. So that's a really close parallel to what's happening right now. So with this Space Force, with all these satellites launching, with all this kind of space warfare type interactions up there, this is really the cutting edge and the time to kind of get ahead of the line. And obviously, who knows how fast this kind of sector grows, but I'm definitely super interested. And again, Nathan brings up a lot of good points, and this is why we do this type of research. It's not only just qualitative, we're going to get into some quant as well, but just kind of showing you just the base layer. But anyways, that was enough of me. Let's get back to the expert over here, Nathan.
Yes, of course. And Kenny brings up a lot of really good points there. Of course, the economic possibilities here are truly insane, but the time horizon is also really big. So there has to be a better way to invest than to just park your capital for like 2 decades and wait for these technologies to mature, right? And you might be thinking, oh, I'll just wait like 5 years, 10 years until these are a little further on and we can sort of see the potential, and then I'll invest. But no, now is the time to invest, and it's actually a little more urgent than you may think, because 5 years, 10 years from now will be too late. And that's the next thing I do want to discuss. So let me not forget to share my screen this time. And all right. So this is the first blog post on the Red Cliff Research site. And what we talk about in this post is the sentiment factor of space. And the time horizon on this is significantly reduced. We're going to be talking about 2024. 2024 is a really big date because that is when NASA has committed to sending humans back to the moon. In 2024, the first woman and the next man will set foot on the moon. And there are billions of dollars of government money already going into this. Like Kenny mentioned, the government loves this, but eventually this is going to expand to the private sector as well. And we've already seen that with SpaceX and a few other companies that we'll be talking about later. But the super exciting thing about going back to the moon in 2024 is that we haven't done so in, well, it will have been over 50 years. And we have to talk about the sentiment factor here, because the average person doesn't think about space on a daily basis, I don't think. Unless you follow Elon Musk on Twitter, you're not thinking about space 24/7, or at least several times a day. But that will change once people are able to see with their own eyes people walking on the moon. It's one thing to read about it in history books or watch really clunky, fuzzy historical footage. It's a completely different thing to be able to watch something like that live. When the original moon landings happened, 1/6 of the world population tuned in to watch it. And the majority of people who are alive today were not born in time to see the moon landings. So people will be watching this. It will be a massive global event, and that is likely going to be the time when investors start pouring into space stocks, because they'll be able to see the potential. It'll no longer be this speculative industry. That is when people will realize, oh my God, space is here. It's the future. There's so much money to be made. And I promise, I can guarantee this, in 2024, space stocks will be trading at a massive premium because people will all be piling into this. And ideally, you want to get in now, if for no other reason than to be able to sell these stocks in 2024 for an extremely inflated premium. So that is a more near-term profit. So I implore all of you to put some space stocks into your portfolio for that reason alone, because the sentiment factor of something this massive is truly insane. It's unmatched. And I know Kenny is the sentiment expert. So if you have any comments on that,
yeah,
sure.
I think, in our lifetime, well, not in a lifetime, let's say in the last 2 decades, we had the internet boom for sure. And then, we didn't think we'd match that anytime soon, but we did get the cryptocurrency boom, I would say. And then now the EV run. I would say we might pause for a while, but the next thing we'll get maybe in 2 years is the almost obvious, but obvious now, not so obvious now, but obvious later space move. And I really think that this, like Nathan is presenting, this is a really good time to think about this. And if you've watched my videos, you know that like we always try to front run these things, right? We want to go where the puck is going. We don't sit there and say, oh my gosh, let's FOMO into this trade. And I know this is really long, and it might feel like you're parking money, but we're going to talk about why we don't think you're parking money too. So there's a short-term trade on here, but there's definitely a reason to be long on a bunch of these stocks. And so, yeah, go ahead, Nathan.
Yes. So now that we've talked about the long term and sort of the medium term, now we really get to go into the short term, which is front running the ARK Invest Space ETF, which will be coming out March 29th, according to the filings. So this is a very, very near term trade. And I have pretty much compiled a very abbreviated version of our report. I think the full report will be down in the description on Gumroad. But this will be a brief overview of the type of research we did and how we arrived at the conclusions we did. So right here are the 6 categories that ARK is planning on putting in their space ETF: reusable rockets, orbital aerospace, suborbital, aerial drones, 3D printing, and enabling technology. And I'm going to go over, I think we picked 2 stocks from our list. The final report has 9, and we chose 9 because that was a decent balance between risk aversion and potential profit. The average ARK ETF does have 30 to 50 holdings, so we are hoping and anticipating to go 9 for 9 on all of these stocks being included in ARKX, just because, that's the ticker symbol it will be going under. But we have a decent chance of being completely correct, and that's one of the really exciting things about this. So our first pick here is Rocket Lab. It's currently a SPAC. It's currently trading as VACQ, but will soon become RKLB. Market cap $4 billion, institutional ownership still really high, but it is in the reusable rocket sector. So Rocket Lab is a very impressive company, and I've been waiting for them to go public for quite a while now. They do some very innovative things. So they are a small launch company who has been able to 3D print their own rocket engines. And 3D printing rocket engines is a really innovative idea because it allows them to print one rocket every 24 hours with extreme precision and reliability, because in the space industry, you can have very little margins for error, and they're able to achieve that by 3D printing their engines. They're also able to reuse their first stages. They have such a small rocket that they can actually catch it mid-air from a parachute with a helicopter, which I think is absolutely insane. But that's it. They're able to cut costs there significantly. And with their going public, they went public now for a reason, and that's because they want to raise capital for their next big project. They will be creating a medium lift rocket called Neutron with a reusable first stage very similar to the SpaceX Falcon 9. And this is exciting for several reasons, but mainly for this tweet down here from Elon Musk. This, in English, Elon is basically saying that SpaceX currently has more demand than they know what to do with, because everyone is super interested in space, especially with the costs declining. They have more demand than they know what to do with. And this is proof that when Rocket Lab gets their Neutron rocket up and running, they aim to do that by 2024. I don't know if we put that in here, but they'll have Neutron ready by 2024. They don't have to blaze any new trails. They just have to follow exactly what SpaceX did. And once they do that, they will be able to take a significant portion of the market share. And when they do, they will easily be able to 3x, 4x, I believe 5x, but I'm super bullish on space. So I don't want to put that into your minds. But based on where SpaceX was in valuation when they had the Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy entering operation, Rocket Lab has lots of room to grow. And with compounding that with the sentiment factor that we talked about earlier with space and space stocks trading at a premium, we put our 5-year price target at $90. That would be around 2026. I would be able to see this in the triple digits, but again, we didn't go that bullish on our theses, because we do want to make these realistic price targets. And I understand that not everyone is as bullish on the space industry as me. Exactly. So
Nathan, can you explain the kind of difference between medium lift and kind of stuff that Rocket Labs is doing now? I think that'd be an interesting kind of just to visualize for folks that how much of a difference in payload that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So their Electron rocket right now, I believe it can launch about 800 kilograms roughly into low Earth orbit. And with Neutron, they'll be able to launch about 8,000. So it's a 10x boost.
We love 10x
And
on
the
this
Falcon
channel.
9, yes. That's about half of what the Falcon 9 will be able to do, but it's still in the same class of medium lift rockets. And Neutron will be human rated. You will be able to put humans on top of this thing and send them into space.
Wow.
But the main market that Rocket Lab is aiming to target with their Neutron rocket is mega constellations. And their CEO, Peter Beck, actually talked about this in their announcement video. So SpaceX is currently building Starlink, and that has massive potential to provide high-speed internet to everyone in the world. A lot of companies are realizing the potential of this and want to compete directly with SpaceX for Starlink. But the thing is, to build a mega constellation, you have to launch a mega constellation. And I don't think Elon Musk would be too inclined to help competitors launch their constellations into orbit to compete directly with his Starlink. So where's that demand going to go? It's going to go straight to Rocket Lab. And that's what they said. Peter Beck described Neutron as a mega constellation building machine. So it's really great to see that this company has a clear-cut plan for exactly how they're going to take a big portion of the market share in this medium lift space. And I will talk about medium lift a little bit later. But right now I want to talk about the next stock on our list. This is 2 out of 2 for the ones that we are fitting into this video. This is Proto Labs. This is a 3D printing company. So they are already in several ARK funds, ARK-K and ARK-Q, and I think they might be in the 3D printing ETF as well. But they focus on cheap, low-volume manufacturing, and their turnaround times are quite impressive. So with manufacturing in general, the amount of time it takes to go from submitting a design to getting your prototypes back, it's generally on the timescale of weeks and months, but Proto Lab is able to do it on a timescale of days. It's really impressive what they're able to do. They have heavily automated their entire process, and they even have AI doing their quoting for them. But so even if you think that 3D printing is still like a few decades off from taking the lion's share of the manufacturing industry, there is still a very interesting trade here. And that is because 3D printing has a much more immediate application in the space industry. So there's something in space, the space industry called the tyranny of the fairing, and that is the volume limit for the amount you can put in any given rocket. So there's obviously the weight constriction about the cost of sending per kilogram of sending payloads to orbit, but there's also a limit to the volume of what you can send to orbit. And that's because everything you put on a rocket has to fit into that fairing. That's the nose cone that houses the payload. And if you want to make something in space that is bigger than that fairing, well, then you either have to unfold it like unfolding solar panels, or you can manufacture things in space. And that's where 3D printing comes in. There are currently satellites that are demonstrating the technology of 3D printing in space, and there are satellites that can actually construct themselves. They're self-assembling satellites in space. And when it comes to building all these fancy things like space stations and even habitats on other celestial bodies, 3D printing and additive manufacturing will become a very large deal. And ARK has already expressed interest in putting through a lot of 3D printing stocks in ARK-X. But overall, even if you aren't super bullish on the 3D printing industry, there is definitely a play within aerospace for them. And I did quickly want to talk about the technicals for this stock. I know a lot of this is qualitative analysis, but I did want to quickly show you that pretty much all of the stocks on our list are trading at a massive discount right now because of the recent tech sell-off. There is so much fear in the markets. I think this is about over 50% down from highs. And when a stock is down 50% from highs, it has over 100% upside to its previous highs. And once the fear in the market, goes away, I think, Jerome did a decently okay job of addressing those fears today. But once that fear goes away, we know that there are buyers up here. We know that, when there is hype in these industries, there will be people willing to buy these stocks up here, and we can buy them right here. and sell them once they're back to these levels. And another thing I want to point out on this chart is that this is January 14th. I think this is when Cathie Wood announced her space ETF, and look what the stock did over the next few days. Okay, a 70% run. This is what a lot of our stocks look like. A lot of the stocks we picked to front run the space ETF with, they look like this. They went up massively, but now they're all trading at a massive discount. So this is a really good time to get into these stocks, whether you're holding short term or long term. So the next segment. Kenny, do you have any comments on that?
No, I was just 2 points. One, 3.6 billion market cap, super small, super light.
Yes.
So definitely can be moved. The needle can definitely be moved, and that's kind of why we picked it. So if you see here, like the right cliff designation is ARC-X front run. What we're trying to say there is, if there is a substantial move to the upside, and we kind of have a formulaic strategy built out in the report, but if there is that upside move, then you do want to trim your profits or whatever kind of strategy you want to use, because obviously we want to talk about strategy, but we help build strategies, but we don't define them. You should define them based on your risk tolerance. But if you're a long-term holder, no problem. But I think there's definitely a short-term trade here. And again, we have previous historical data to prove that for a few reasons. And then just kind of a funny point. If you're wondering where where the internet is in Africa for my Jamia play, then Starlink is the thing to watch. So
yes. Also, another thing that I forgot to mention about Proto Labs in particular, we do point this out with the other stocks that we pick, but it's one thing to be in an ARC fund. It's a completely different thing to be in ARC-K, because that's Cathie Wood's flagship fund. And if you see this on any of the stocks that are in the final report, if it says in ARC-K, that means Cathie Wood has a very high conviction in the stock. So that's another thing to point out. But the next, this is my second favorite segment. I think my favorite segment is the why isn't this stock on the list, which we'll get to next. But second favorite segment is Sam Korus network analysis. So it was not difficult to figure out that Sam will be the one spearheading the ARC space ETF. He's the analyst who has been posting the most research about space on the ARC website. He's also been posting an awful lot about space on Twitter for somebody who went to college for cognitive analysis. We found several sources of Sam talking about various stocks, and we were able to gauge his interest in certain companies and positions that he will likely try to add to ARC-X. So here's one of the tweets we found. And it was relevant to the example of Rocket Lab that we selected. So SpaceX makes Falcon 1, realizes not a sustainable market, and makes Falcon 9. 10 plus years later, every small rocket company says small rockets are a sustainable market. Rocket Lab goes public and decides to build a Falcon 9 competitor. So Sam here is implying that small rockets, which Rocket Lab was doing for a very long time and doing successfully, is not a sustainable market, and he's praising them for going public and trying to raise enough capital to build a Falcon 9 competitor. So that's the type of proof that we do look for when trying to confirm directly from the source, directly from Sam, that certain stocks will be in ARC-X. And we use this network analysis on a couple other stocks. The next segment in our report is why isn't this stock on the list? And this was my personal favorite segment of the report to write, because I got to bag on Boeing a lot. I really am annoyed with Boeing. I didn't include them as an example here because if I started talking about Boeing and why they're so awful in the space industry, this would be a several hour-long video. So for our example of why this stock isn't on the list, we have Astra, which is Rocket Lab's direct competitor in the small launch industry. And you can think of Astra as sort of the other small launch company that's currently trading public. And, if you don't do your due diligence or know too much about the space industry, you might not really be able to tell the difference between Astra and Rocket Lab. But the difference between these two companies is really night and day. Astra is a small launch company that really isn't as ambitious or as innovative as Rocket Lab. They basically make a small rocket, like a really, really small rocket that can fit on a truck or a boat or a plane and can be launched from anywhere in the world, which is a pretty decent advantage if you're trying to serve customer who wants to put a satellite in a very unique orbit. So they do have that niche, and that's kind of good, I guess. But contrast them with Rocket Lab, who not only have been able to do much more innovative and unique things like 3D printer engines and recover their first stages. But Rocket Lab has realized, again, like Sam said, that small launches are not a sustainable market. There are so many other companies trying to make a name for themselves in the small launch space. Even Richard Branson's other company, Virgin Orbit, will likely be going public via SPAC soon. And Virgin Orbit launches small rockets off of the wings of 747s. So if you think of the 747 as the first stage of the rocket, technically they have a reusable first stage. And the reasoning behind that is if they get the rocket high enough, above the thickest parts of the atmosphere, it takes less fuel and thus less mass to get payloads to orbit. So there are lots of companies like Virgin Orbit trying to enter the small launch space, and Rocket Lab really sees the writing on the wall and have decided to go public, raise a bunch of capital, and graduate to medium lift, where there's a lot more demand. There's a lot more demand for larger satellites and mega constellations and human-rated flight and all these things. Astra simply doesn't have that ambition. And again, we said Astra's only niche is being able to launch from anywhere. But if Virgin Orbit is able to launch from the wing of a 747, they're able to launch everywhere as well. So now Astra has no competitive edge over any of its competitors. So that's why we don't really like Astra. Again, if you go all the way back up to the categories that will be in ARC-X, none of these are non-reusable rockets. There's reusable rockets, but I don't think ARC will be very interested in Astra, especially after this tweet by Sam criticizing small launch companies. We really don't see Astra making it into ARC-X. And these are the types of things where if you don't do your due diligence and know a lot about the space industry, you can make the mistake of not really being able to tell the difference between Astra and Rocket Lab. And let me come back for a quick second. Okay. One example of this would be ZipTrader. I noticed that in his videos, he has mentioned both Astra and Rocket Lab. His price target on Astra is $30, and his price target on Rocket Lab is $18. If you adjust that for market cap, he believes that they should be trading at roughly the same valuation. And that's just ridiculous based on what we know. Rocket Lab has a massive potential addressable market. They have the ambition to stay alive in this ever-changing industry. Astra does not. And I think all the people in ZipTrader U who are following that price target are going to get burned on that particular trade. So that is another case of if you don't do your due diligence on these trades in this very nuanced and technical industry, you will mess up. You will mess up and you will get burned. So that's all I wanted to share about that. So if you have any stock in HOL or were planning to, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Oh man, shots fired. You might get a little bit of heat for that, but no, I love it. Just on a scale of 1 through 10, so like Tesla is a 10, Nikola is a 1. Tell me where Astra is.
I mean, Astra is not it's not a scam. It's not awful, but again, it's not a sustainable market. When the price of rocket launches keeps falling, like the thing about small launches is that you serve small sats. But the thing is, the Falcon 9, like a medium lift, or the Falcon Heavy, a heavy lift rocket, can also compete in small launch industries. They just pile like 150 satellites onto one launch and then take them all into space at once. So as these rockets get bigger and more reusable, the bigger, more reusable rockets will drown out the smaller, more non-reusable rockets. So any company, any space company that is not currently migrating to building even bigger, even more reusable rockets is going to eventually go bankrupt. And Rocket Lab has the ambition and has the potential to really capitalize and take a good share of the reusable rocket market. Astra does not. So, I'd say it's like a 2 or a 3, but eventually it is going bankrupt unless they get acquired by like Blue Origin or something crazy like that. So that's just something to keep in mind. You want to be on the right side of innovation, as Cathie Wood always likes to say. But down to sort of the end of what our report has, we do compile our conviction weightings for all the stocks that we will be front running the space ETF with. These aren't the actual stocks. I just sort of replaced these with stocks from Kerbal Space Program. So don't go looking for the ticker symbol for Kerbal Motion LLC or Probo Dobodyne, or you will feel stupid afterwards. But then we also did make a calculator for the stocks that we will be putting in our play to front run the ETF. So you will be able to make a copy of a spreadsheet and then type in the amount of capital you would like to commit to this particular trade. And it'll instantly tell you how many shares of each company to buy. So that's like a little, that's sort of the icing on the cake of what we've been able to do with this report. But that's roughly it. That is basically the type of research we were able to put into this report. It was quite the time crunch to put this all out a decent bit before the space ETF goes public. We definitely pulled a lot of long hours to try to get this to you. We're filming this on Wednesday. Hopefully this will be out by Wednesday or Thursday so that you can get into these stocks on Friday while they're still trading at a massive discount. Because if you wait until March 26th, there might be another pre-anticipatory run. And we do account for that in our trading strategy. But if you want to take this play, please do so now. Your profit margins will most likely be significantly better. So yeah.
Yeah, so just to touch on the old SamWatch thing, we kind of just briefly glossed over. But the idea here is, as a co-founder of a data analytics company and with my previous background and a lot of the friends that I have, our backgrounds, we did a lot of kind of open source research on a lot of different things, hard to find things, illuminating a lot of different dark networks and kind of antagonists, if you will. I'm just trying to be very cagey here, but you can kind of imagine what I'm talking about. That said, when it came to Sam Chorus and the ARK Fund, they are not invisible entities by any means. So essentially, they're telling on themselves. And with enough research, with enough due diligence, digging deep enough, using enough Google Translate, you can find them talking about things that definitely will make it to the ARK Fund. And I think we will be 9 for 9. If we're not, then big lashings on the team, but I think they'll survive for now. But yeah, no, I think this was an awesome project, and I do want to thank Nathan for really leaning into it as a research lead. That's always a hard thing to rally everybody and corral everybody. We even tried to do Asana and spent some hard-earned capital trying to figure out how to work that for a while, and we decided against it. But right now, definitely an interesting kind of platform as well. So the deal with the report is, and if you're wondering, why it's just not fully shared here. So the Innovation Lab is a group of about 20 people. Everybody's just working for free. Nobody's doing it for anything else. Redcliffe Research, in terms of what we're doing by design, I never really usually ask anybody for anything, but I am asking for support of the Innovation Lab. And that's because I think this is the ultimate community kind of decorum, if you will. So instead of me giving you crap insight, I'd rather build a team of actual experts. So, we have Nathan who loves aerospace, right, in the space sector. We have an actual aerospace engineer advising. We have the PhD in rocket science doing the technical advising. We have a team of strategists. And then obviously Marcus, the CFO, taking a look at the financial risk and just making sure that the books look at least decent enough when he's not being lazy, but lashings on him as well. But no, seriously though, we had a brilliant team, and to Nathan's point about Zip Trader Charlie, he's awesome too, but he doesn't have the bandwidth nor the capacity to put something like this together. And so this is just our way of just really, really kind of supporting our own innovation lab. And if you've been watching us for more than a day or two, then you kind of know this is just like a really community-driven kind of network, kind of channel, if you will. And I don't even want to call it channel, but I have no other better word for it yet. But yeah, so if you're asking why this is not on here, it really is that. And so for what it's worth, if you do have the time, the inclination, or if you're really just bullish on space, or you're just someone who really likes to support community functions and kind of decentralizing analysis, that's what we're trying to achieve in the Innovation Lab. Unfortunately, we're full right now, so we're not taking anybody on. But if you are interested, obviously put in your application, and we'll think about it and definitely start onboarding people as people get bored or lazy or whatever like that. But so far we've had a very good run of it, and obviously this report is just the beginning. So I'm going really long here, but I just really want to express to you, to the Innovation Lab, my gratitude for all these other things. And as these things come out, even if you don't see it now, obviously in some time we'll trickle out the just kind of the whole report for free at some point in time. But like for now, we really just want to try to support the Innovation Lab. I am not getting any profits from this. This goes 100% to the team. So Nathan and his team is explicitly profiting from this, not the Red Cliff Research company. So just so you know that. So this really is the Innovation Lab and a function of the Innovation Lab. So Nathan, I really want to thank you for coming and just explaining everybody how cool space is. And, it really is an important thing because sometimes, like we've talked about, a qualitative is sometimes the best measurement you could take because, you can layer on the quant, but if you don't have the story, and everybody knows this, even the great financial analysts, like if you don't have the valuation story, then the quant doesn't mean anything. So any last words before I get out of here?
Yeah, of course. I do want to double down on what you said, Kenny. Kenny really isn't taking any profits or any cut of any of what we're doing right now. He's been extremely helpful, and I joined the Innovation Lab so I could hopefully learn from his guidance and some of the other people who have been in the markets much longer than me, and it really has lived up. So Kenny has been extremely supportive. I know he'll be humble about it, but I just want to get it out there. He's been great.
Oh, I'm not humble, Nathan. Not at all. But I do want to be called bro or homie. I don't know if you've seen that video yet. I just posted, but it is. Okay. Awesome. Thanks a lot, Nathan, and we really appreciate you. Hopefully we can get you back on for some more space stuff. And I know we're working on a actually gaming ETF coming soon that actually Nathan volunteered to do some work on too. So I'm going to keep abusing you until you run out of power. So.
Of course. Thank you, Kenny, for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nathan. Appreciate you. All right. Bye, everybody.